Well, Happy New Year's, everybody. This is the first day of 2013, and as usual on New Year's Day, we have plenty of good college football. 6 bowl games on today. I'd like to go through them all now quickly, starting with the Gator Bowl right here in my backyard, played in Jacksonville, Florida. We are broadcasting, of course, from Ponte Vedra, right outside of Jacksonville. This year's Gator Bowl is Mississippi State from the SEC versus Northwestern from the Big Ten. Northwestern is currently installed as a 2-point favorite on BETDAQ. 54.5 is the total. And you break this game down, it really sets up for a Northwestern play. Now, this is not one of my favorite games. I do have 2 games today that were included in my 5 bowl best bets that we put up on the site about a week and a half ago. We'll get to those games here in a second. This game is not included. I feel like this game's sort of a coin flip, Mississippi State Northwestern, even though, as I said, it sets up for a Northwestern play. What I mean by that, Northwestern 9-3 this year, but they've been one of the best teams in the country to back 11-1 against the spread. And their strength is running the football. They average 230 rush yards per game. Venrick Mark is their running back, but the guy I want you to keep an eye on if you're watching this game, Kane Coulter, number 2 for Northwestern. He'll line up at quarterback, at running back, at wide receiver. He is the definition of an all-purpose weapon. He's their best offensive player. And every time I watch this guy, I am impressed. I mean, Northwestern, I feel like they're best when he's playing quarterback just because he gets the ball in his hands every play. But sometimes they bring in Trevor Siemian, who's more of a pass-first quarterback, move Coulter out to the wide receiver. When they do that, Coulter's their best wide receiver. When they move him at running back, Coulter's probably their best running back, even though, as we said, Venrick Mark, who I believe rushed for over 1,300 yards this year. I know he topped 1,000, but Venrick Mark's a pretty good running back himself. Mississippi State struggles a little bit against the run, so Northwestern should be able to run the ball effectively. Also, Mississippi State lost 4 out of their last 5 games. They're 8-4 on the year. Lost 4 out of the last 5 games, including their final game to arch-rival Ole Miss. And their quarterback, Tyler Russell, sprained his ankle in that game. Apparently a severely sprained ankle, so Dan Mullen, Mississippi State's coach, has said Russell's going to go in this game, but he's certainly not going to be 100%. We do not expect him to play the whole game. We're going to see a lot of Dak Prescott, Mississippi State's backup quarterback. If you've seen the Bulldogs play this year, you've seen plenty of Dak Prescott. He's come in, but more in short yardage situations, kind of how Florida used Tim Tebow when he was a freshman. Keep in mind, Dan Mullen, Mississippi State's head coach, was Florida's offensive coordinator at that time. And Prescott comes in much the same manner when Mississippi State is facing short yardage situations or goal line situations. They bring in Prescott to run the ball because he is a run-first guy at this point in his career. But he threw the ball a little bit after Tyler Russell sprained his ankle against Ole Miss. And assuming he plays a large part of the game today, he will be asked to do more than just run the ball today against Northwestern. And he needs to, because Northwestern's weakness is in the secondary. They're a good run defense, top 20 in the country in rush defense, but they do not have a very good secondary. But again, because Tyler Russell is out, I mean, Tyler Russell is a better passer than Dak Prescott. There's no doubt about that. It seems to set up for a Northwestern play. That being said, it has been 63 years since Northwestern has won a bowl game. So be warned, okay? Northwestern, they played a weaker schedule this year. Mississippi State plays in the best conference in the country, the best division in the country, meaning the SEC West. A big reason they lost 4 out of the last 5 games because they had to play teams like Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M. So it's not like Mississippi State was losing to a bunch of cupcakes. And Northwestern, they play in a tough league, the Big Ten. And as we said, 11-1 against the spread this year. So they kept nearly every game close. But what scared me off the Northwestern side of this game was the fact they haven't won a bowl game in 63 years, was the fact they face weaker competition week in and week out. Wouldn't surprise me at all if Mississippi State were to win this bowl game, though I do have a slight lean towards Northwestern -2. Let's go to the next game, the Heart of Dallas Bowl, pitting Purdue from the Big Ten and Oklahoma State from the Big 12. This is the biggest number of the bowl season. Oklahoma State, a 17-point favorite on BETDAQ. 71 is the total here. You look at this game, it's easy to see why Oklahoma State's a big favorite. I'd be stunned if Oklahoma State lost this game. Purdue, after all, has a terrible defense, 73rd nationally in total defense, 72nd points allowed. The Boilermakers just squeaked into a bowl game. If the Big Ten weren't so bad this year, they would not have made a bowl game. If they played in the Big 12 or the SEC or maybe even the Pac-12, I don't believe they'd have been good enough to qualify for a bowl. Mentioned their bad defense. They're just about as bad on offense. They do score 30 points per game, Purdue does. They score 30 and they give up 29. Not in the top 50 in the country in any major offensive statistical category. Oklahoma State, on the other hand, hey, fifth in the country in yards per game. They average 550 yards per game. Fourth in the country in scoring offense. They score 44.7 points per game. So this Oklahoma State offense that averages 45 points per game, 550 yards per game, against the Purdue defense that is 72nd in the country in points allowed. They allow 29 per game, 73rd in yards allowed. I mean, appears to be a mismatch here. Now, Oklahoma State does have a really bad secondary themselves. Oklahoma State 117th in the country in pass defense. They allow 285 yards per game. And Purdue does throw the ball a little bit. I believe they're averaging right in the neighborhood of 240 pass yards per game. So we expect Purdue to score some points here. Obviously, we see a total like 71. We know both these teams are expected to score. And I do lean towards over that total. Probably my favorite bet of this game. As far as the line goes, listen, I know it looks like a mismatch. I do expect Oklahoma State to win the game easily. But I'm not laying 17 points in a bowl game. There is no chance. Bowl games, very unpredictable, as we've said, due to the layoff, the amount of time these teams have between their last game and their bowl game. These two teams, it'll be a month since they've played. So you never know how that might affect these guys. I do not feel comfortable laying 17 points here. Though if you were going to bet on Purdue and take the points, it would just be a hold on and hope type situation. You would just hope that Purdue could score enough to hang in there. Maybe Oklahoma State would turn the ball over a time or two. Again, don't really like either side here in terms of the handicap. I do lean towards over 71. Let's go to the next game. Should be a more competitive game. The Capital One Bowl, formerly the Citrus Bowl, played in Orlando every year. This year it's Georgia from the SEC facing Nebraska from the Big Ten. Georgia's an 8-point favorite in this game on BETDAQ, 61.5 the total. When I first saw this number, it struck me as kind of a big number. Both these teams made their conference championship games. Both of them lost those games. Georgia, you remember, lost that thrilling SEC championship game to Alabama. Nebraska was blown out by Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. Wisconsin, who's lost 5 games this season, beat the Huskers 70-31. That's right, 70-31. And that's not the first time this Nebraska defense has been embarrassed this year. A month ago, or I guess 2 months ago now, a month before the Big Ten championship game, they gave up 63 to Ohio State. So neither Ohio State nor Wisconsin had good offenses this year, and Nebraska gave up 70 and 63 to those teams. Georgia has a better offense, and I guess that's why we see a number like 8 here. Again, that number did strike me as kind of high when I first saw it, because Nebraska's a good team. They have a pretty good offense. They can really run the ball. Quarterback Taylor Martinez, a dual threat, still more of a running threat than a passing threat, but he can absolutely fly. Nebraska's career leader in total offense. They got a couple good running backs. My favorite running back they have is Rex Burkhead. He is a tough runner. And Georgia does struggle defending the run. The Bulldogs' weakness is rush defense, 78th in the country, rush yards allowed. They allow 178 yards per game. Anybody who saw that SEC championship game, Alabama running right through that Georgia defense, you realize that Georgia does have some trouble stopping the run, and Nebraska can run the football. But is Nebraska going to be able to slow down this Georgia offense? Georgia is very balanced. The running back combination, Gershel, they call it Gershel, freshman Todd Gurley, Keith Marshall. And, of course, Aaron Murray, Georgia's quarterback, a future NFL guy. He leads the country in yards per pass attempt, and he's top 5 in passing efficiency. Murray's had an excellent year this year. And you see a total here like 61.5. That's because Nebraska struggles on defense. Georgia has that good offense. And as we mentioned, Georgia struggles to stop the run. So both offenses should have some success here. I still don't like over 61.5. I believe that number's a little big. And even though at first I thought this was a big number, the closer I look at this game, the more I think Georgia might cover this number. So this is not one of my favorite games. We mentioned there are 2 games today that are among my favorite bowl bets of the season. This is not one of them, though I do have a slight lean towards Georgia -8. Now let's get to some games I do like. One of those games is the Outback Bowl. South Carolina from the SEC playing Michigan from the Big Ten. South Carolina is currently installed as a 4.5-point favorite on BETDAQ, 47.5 the total. And I do like the Gamecocks of South Carolina in this game. You know, South Carolina does not have a great offense this year, and they lost their best offensive player, Marcus Lattimore, towards the end of the season, suffered that gruesome knee injury. 2nd year in a row they've lost Lattimore. And for the 2nd year in a row, their offense did not take a step back after Lattimore left. South Carolina's offense, they weren't great with Lattimore. They weren't great without him, but they were just as good. Finished the season strong, beating arch rival Clemson, and Clemson beat LSU last night in an impressive win. So that's a good win for South Carolina, no doubt about it. I mean, the Gamecocks are just a really good team. This is the prime example. When people talk about the SEC being the best conference in the country, it is. And it's not just because year after year they have the best team in the country. I believe 6 straight national championships and counting, either 6 or 7. And they're probably going to make it another one this year with Alabama a heavy favorite over Notre Dame. But it's not just the very top that makes the SEC better than the rest of the conferences around the country. It's the middle of the road teams. And South Carolina is definitely not middle of the road. South Carolina is the, 4th, 5th best team in the SEC, somewhere around there. And you compare South Carolina to the 4th or 5th best team in every other conference in the country, and there's not a comparison. South Carolina, an excellent team. They have NFL talent on both sides of the ball, especially on the defensive side, especially on the front 7. Jadeveon Clowney, South Carolina defensive end, a surefire #1 overall pick in next year's NFL draft. He's not eligible this year, or he'd be the #1 overall pick this year, but unless Clowney gets injured next year, he is the consensus #1 overall pick. This guy, like Andrew Luck was last year, everybody but everybody is saying Jadeveon Clowney is going to be the #1 overall pick. He is a defensive end who runs like a wide receiver. Michigan is going to have a world of trouble keeping him off of Devin Gardner, Denard Robinson, whoever's playing quarterback. And South Carolina's got some talent on the offensive side as well. Connor Shaw and Dylan Thompson, I look for them to split reps in this game. Shaw's played most of the season at quarterback. He's more of a dual threat. Steve Spurrier really adjusted his offense to fit what Connor Shaw can do, runs the ball as well as he passes it, maybe better than he passes it. But Dylan Thompson, because of Shaw's ankle injury, came on strong at the end of the year. Thompson is a more prototypical drop-back quarterback, which we've seen in Steve Spurrier's offenses throughout the years. And Thompson's played well, so we expect to see both those guys in this game. Their best offensive player, skill position player, now that Lattimore's down, is Ace Sanders, the receiver. This guy is electric, and South Carolina's going to look to get it in his hands in any way they can. Now, Michigan made great strides on defense this year. They're much better than they have been the last few seasons on defense, but they've also taken a step back on offense. You know, when Rich Rodriguez was fired from Michigan, the offense was not the problem. Denard Robinson running that spread attack was nearly unstoppable. But now it's a new regime in Michigan. Brady Hoke, of course, the head coach. Al Borges is the offensive coordinator. And Denard Robinson and Al Borges' offense has proven to be a square peg in a round hole. For that reason, they've been able to move Devin Gardner to the quarterback position over the last few weeks. They've moved Denard Robinson to running back / wide receiver. Now, because Robinson has been a record-setting Michigan quarterback, they've been able to save some face. They've blamed it on an elbow injury, why they've moved Robinson away from the quarterback position. But the real reason, anybody watching the game can plainly see, Devin Gardner throws the ball better than Robinson, more of a pro-style quarterback. Now, he's not completely a pro-style quarterback, not a pure pocket passer, and so we've seen Michigan's offense struggle mightily this season, and I expect them to struggle again against South Carolina. Now, Denard Robinson, still their best, most electric offensive player, so they will get him the ball in several different ways. He'll take some snaps at quarterback. He'll take some snaps at running back. We'll see him a little bit at wide receiver. But as we said, this South Carolina defense, just really, really good, especially in the front 7. Their athleticism is unbelievable. They'll be faster than any defense Michigan has played all year, and I don't think Michigan is going to have much success at all on offense in this game. That is why I do have a strong lean towards South Carolina -4.5. I understand why the number is relatively low here, because South Carolina has not been an explosive offense this year. That's why the total is also a reasonable 47.5. But I believe South Carolina is clearly the better team. I think they're going to sort of establish themselves as this game goes along, and I think they're going to win this game by 2 touchdowns. I see a 27-13 final, something like that in this game. I do like South Carolina. Next game I want to talk about, the Rose Bowl. This is my favorite bet of the day. Wisconsin facing Stanford in the Rose Bowl. Wisconsin, the Big Ten champ. We mentioned they laid one on Nebraska 70-31. Stanford, the Pac-12 champ. Now, Stanford has a better record here, and they are a 5-point favorite on BETDAQ. 47 is the total. But I like Wisconsin in this game. I think these teams are mirror images of each other. Both the teams run the ball extremely well. Both of them really struggle to pass the football. Both of them are good against the run. 2 good front 7s on defense. But Stanford's best run defender is out for this game. Defensive tackle Terrence Williams, I believe, off the top of my head. Should have probably wrote it down, but I don't know. You go through so many names. Terrence somebody, Terrence Williams, I don't know. I've seen Stanford play several times this year, and this guy's a space eater on the defensive line. He's the type of guy, it takes two guys to block him, and so he frees up some of those linebackers to make plays. He is out for this game. That's going to make a difference because Wisconsin loves to run the ball with Monte Ball, who, of course, was a Heisman finalist last year. Didn't make it to New York this year because Wisconsin struggled as a team. Again, they lost 5 games, but they played their best football towards the end of the season. Now, part of the reason Stanford is a fairly healthy favorite in this game, a 5-point favorite, is because Bret Bielema, Wisconsin's head coach, shockingly left the team to coach Arkansas right after the Big Ten championship game. And obviously that always creates a whole lot of uncertainty. You know, we're dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-old kids here. Bret Bielema recruited all of them to school, so you never know how kids are going to react to that. But I really like what Wisconsin has done in response to that. Barry Alvarez, who is Wisconsin's athletic director, longtime Wisconsin football coach, the guy who hired Bret Bielema, he's stepping down from his athletic director position to coach in this game. Alvarez was an excellent coach in his decade-plus coaching the Badgers, specifically an excellent bowl coach. 8-3 in bowls, 3-0 in the Rose Bowl. Barry Alvarez knows how to prepare his team for bowl games, and he's intimately familiar with Wisconsin's personnel, obviously. I mean, he's an athletic director who was the former football coach, so I'm sure he knows as much about this team as Bret Bielema does. So I don't think it's going to be any problem at all, Bielema not coaching this game. As a matter of fact, I think it might work to the positive. Barry Alvarez, known as a great motivator, and I think he might be able to get these kids to realize that, hey, you can come together here, win the Rose Bowl, something Bret Bielema had never been able to do as a head coach at Wisconsin, and sort of rally around each other, show Bielema and show the country that it's the players who've been winning these games. It's not Bret Bielema, and they don't need him necessarily. So I look for an inspired performance from Wisconsin in this game. Wouldn't surprise me at all if the Badgers won this game. The fact they're getting 5 points makes it really a no-brainer for me. My favorite bet of the day, my second favorite bet of bowl season, next to the national championship game when I am all over Alabama. Really like Wisconsin and the points in the Rose Bowl today. Final game I want to talk about, final game of this New Year's Day, the Orange Bowl. Should be a great game. It's a BCS game. This year's Orange Bowl, however, is a big letdown. Northern Illinois from the MAC facing Florida State. Florida State a 14.5-point favorite. 58.5 the total. This game is easy to handicap. This is Florida State unless they're not going to be motivated, which they might not be. I mean, after all, if you're Florida State, how do you get motivated to face Northern Illinois? Northern Illinois is a team from the MAC, and by the way, this is proof positive that all the belly aching from Boise State and Utah over the years has ruined the BCS. And fortunately, we're about done with the BCS. Only one more year of the BCS, and we will get a college football playoff in some form, the 4-team playoff. But listen, the fact that we have to watch Northern Illinois in a primetime bowl game, I mean, hey, you know, it's fine and good. I know over the last couple of years, Boise State and before them Utah, they have had good enough teams to compete. Northern Illinois is not Boise State. Do not confuse them with the Boise State of the last few years. This is a team that, they're a small conference team. I mean, this game is effectively future insurance salesmen versus future NFL players. Northern Illinois is 12-1. That's good for them. They had a nice season. They did not play a single good team. I'm not exaggerating. Northern Illinois did not play a single good team all season unless you're counting someone like Kent State as a good team. They only played 2 major conference opponents. They played Kansas, the worst team in the Big 12. Kansas is a disgrace. They beat Kansas. Their only loss of the year was to Iowa. Iowa is terrible this year as well. Iowa did not qualify for a bowl team, one of the worst teams in the Big 10. So Northern Illinois is a team who, if they played in a big-time conference like the SEC, like the Big 10, like the Pac-12, like the Big 12, they'd be one of the worst teams in the conference. But because they play in a league like the MAC, they were able to roll up 12 wins, a 12-1 record, and the computers put them in the top 16, and we know that the new rules now, because, again, of the belly aching from Boise State and Utah, now if one of these teams is in the top 16, the highest-ranked non-BCS team in the top 16 automatically gets a BCS berth. So there you are, Boise State fans, Utah fans. I hope you're happy. We're going to be subjected to Northern Illinois tonight. This game's a total mismatch. Florida State has one of the best defenses in the country. Northern Illinois entirely dependent on their quarterback, Jordan Lynch. This guy led the country, led the entire FBS in total offense, 4,733 total yards, rushed for 1,771. 1,771 yards. This guy's a quarterback. That broke the all-time FBS record for rushing yards by quarterback 11 straight times. Jordan Lynch has rushed for more than 1,000 yards. Having a little trouble here towards the end, aren't I? 11 straight games. Jordan Lynch has rushed for more than 100 yards. Northern Illinois' offense averaging 40 points per game, 250 rush yards per game. But again, they have not faced a single good defense or a single good team all season. This is just going to be a huge step up in class for them. Now, Florida State is an extremely unreliable team, by the way. Florida State has been one of the most overrated teams in the country all year, right up until the end of the year when they were beaten handily by Florida at home. Some people were calling them a legitimate top 5 type team. There were Florida State fans I know because I live here in Jacksonville with plenty of Florida State fans. There were Florida State fans crying about how they weren't getting a shot at the national championship if they beat Florida. Well, anyone who watched this team play, I mean, the ACC was horrible this year. They lost to NC State, a bad team. A couple other games were close, narrow wins. They were trying to lose all year. If they'd been playing in a better league, Florida State would have lost 3 or 4 games. Finally did lose another game to Florida. Almost lost the ACC championship game to a Georgia Tech team that was 6-6 coming into that game. Squeaked by Georgia Tech, did not cover. Florida State is not the type of team you want to be laying 14.5 with. They're not a well-coached team. First of all, Jimbo Fisher has not done a particularly good job there since he took over. That might not be a popular opinion among some Florida State fans, but they had lost 4 games or more every year of the Jimbo Fisher era until this year when they finally found a weak enough ACC where they could roll through with only 1 loss. As we said, they did lose to Florida at the end of the year, so they have 2 losses now. And if Florida State were playing nearly anybody else in the bowl game, I would say it'd be an opportunity to make some money betting against Florida State because, again, this team has underachieved and underperformed consistently in big games under Jimbo Fisher. And I don't feel comfortable laying 14.5 with Florida State here because, again, I feel like they might not have much motivation in this game, but there is no way I would bet on Northern Illinois here. It's a mismatch, and quite frankly, I'm a little disappointed that we have to watch this in prime time in the Orange Bowl. It's probably going to be a game that's going to be worth changing the channel midway through the 3rd quarter, but we'll see. Like everybody else, I'll be rooting for Northern Illinois. I mean, I'll be rooting for, the underdog, the nobody. That's what this game is. Northern Illinois probably does not have a single NFL player on their roster, future NFL player on their roster. Florida State probably has, about 12 or 15, including about 5 of their front 7 on defense. So look for Florida State's front 7 to dominate this game, shut down Northern Illinois quarterback Jordan Lynch. I guess I lean towards the under here. The total is 58.5. I'm just hoping Northern Illinois' defense would somehow slow down Florida State's offense. I certainly think the Seminoles are going to really slow down this Northern Illinois offense. So maybe Northern Illinois is going to prove me wrong in this game and be competitive or pull out a win, even though that would just be stunning. But I don't think so. I think Florida State's going to win the game handily in a game that's not going to be too fun to watch. So there you have it. My 2 favorite bets of the day, South Carolina minus 4.5, Wisconsin plus 5. I wish you best of luck today and whatever you decide to do, just so long as your interests don't conflict with my interests.